I'm just going to do an introduction, so, you know, for the purpose of
We
the
can
program.
smoke and drink coffee.
I would say do whatever you want. I'm going to smoke, so.
Should we focus on the camera?
He's going to focus on you.
Okay, we just talk to each other.
Yeah, he's going to focus on you.
How
That's
are
why.
you with smoking?
It's all right with me.
Won't bother you?
No.
So you ready? Okay. As part of the Greater Capital District Teacher Center grant entitled "It's Time Has Come: Supplementary Materials for Teaching the Vietnam War," we have the honor and pleasure of being at the Vet Center on Central Avenue this afternoon, where we are going to, I think I will have them introduce themselves. We're going to talk with 4 veterans from the Vietnam War. Let's start with this young lady on my left.
Margaret Gundersen.
Mark, can you tell us a little about your experience in Vietnam? Just when
I
you-
was a MediVac nurse. We were based at Cameron Bay, and we would fly from Cameron Bay up to the DMZ, and then on the way back we would pick up the wounded that had first come to the field hospital, and then were stable enough to be air evac down to Cameron Bay and finally out country.
Thank you.
George Baranaski. I was with 2nd Battalion, 8th Cavalry, 1st Cavalry Division. I was with the infantry, carried a 60 caliber machine gun, mostly I think in Bong Song. I'm not really sure on that. Main objective was to fight the war. You know, little did we know about it, but I guess that was it.
What years you were in Vietnam?
July 28, 1966 to July 28, 1967.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sal D Ippolito. I was in Vietnam in 1967, 1968 for about 10 months. The jobs I had while I was there ranged from being a switchboard operator to a radio operator, a little time with 25th Infantry Division about a month, and then about 4 months with 11th Armored Cavalry. And what I did with my job with the cavalry was to go out at night on ambushes, basically.
So Sal, you were there when 10 happened then?
Yeah, that's when I was with the 25th Infantry. They took me out to do street fighting in Benoit, Saigon, and so on.
Thank you.
Hi, Hal Silverstein. I was in Vietnam 1969, 1970 for almost 12 months. I was combat photojournalist out of Admiral Zumwalt's Public Affairs Office in Saigon. Mostly dispatched with the Brown Water Navy down in the Delta, the Riverine Patrol Force.
Thank you, sir. Can we just talk for a brief moment, maybe Sal, we can start with you. Just your experiences after you left Vietnam, you came back and you came home. You know, your experiences in Vietnam, or you know, in the United States, excuse me.
Well, okay.
What was the reaction to people when you came back and you came home and they said, "Where have you been for 12 months?" You know?
Yeah.
And you said, "I was in Vietnam."
Okay. I got a lot of different reactions. I got scorned by strangers. You know, I have people. You know, when I first got back and was walking around with my uniform on, people would say, "How could you do that?" I said, "How could I do that? You know, I did something good." You know, I got reactions like that. I got a lot of relief reactions from my family and friends. You know, I figured when I left, they'd never see me again because things were pretty bad. And then I got pat on the back reactions from like some of my neighbors and the older guys, the older men who had been in World War II and thought that, you know, they were proud of me. And from my peer group, you know, people my age who found their way out of going for one reason or another. It was like, you know, they couldn't look me in the eye because it's hard to explain. It just made things more confusing. Confusion's the word I'll use to sum it all up. And it caused confusion in myself and how I felt about what I did, and caused me not to know whether what I did was right or wrong, and made me feel really inadequate. Made me feel really my self-esteem just couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't understand what was going on. I couldn't understand a lot of the things they were saying on TV and the media wasn't what was going on. And the decadence of American society, the comfort, the security, the money, the material things that everybody was taking for granted, caused a lot of bad feelings in me too. I wanted to grab people riding in Cadillacs and limousines and say, hey, you know what's going on? 2 weeks ago I was in, I was in the jungle, you know what I mean? And guys are there right now, and it caused me a lot of problems. I didn't know what to think or how to feel. What I did personally, I self-medicated myself and became a drug addict, and didn't bother. I killed my feelings.
How old were you?
When I came back, I went over when I was 19.
So you're just a kid?
Yeah, 21 when I came back. Yeah. Not a kid really, but young man, yeah. I was young. That was basically my reactions. I had such confusion about what I did and what was going on that then there was just a whole section of my peer group that was protesting and revolting against the war and against the government. I said, whoa, what's right and wrong? What side should I be on? Should I hold up with the guys that I served with, or hold up with my peer group that's protesting? Who's right and wrong? And I didn't know.
I don't know if there's any justification, but the one thing that I found out doing this project is that things flip-flop. You must be probably more aware of that. I mean, that's one of the things that I found out, where today the veteran is much more accepted than people who oppose the war. You think that's true? That's what I began to find out. I've had a much more difficult time finding people who will oppose the war to talk. In fact, one guy said to me, and I know I'm on tape, he said to me that he didn't want to talk because he was afraid that the FBI records, if they kept back that, he didn't want to expose himself to any more publicity than he had to. Did everybody share the same experience that Sal did when he came back? Basically?
I think so. Basically, I just want to be by myself, and just let everybody leave me the hell alone. It's like, I don't need these people. Matter of fact, it's like right now, I feel the same way. Right now. 10 months ago, I started coming here and finding friends. I mean, these are my friends. I never really knew any combat veterans till I came here, and now that I know a few of them, they're becoming my friends. Right now they're my associates. I haven't accepted them completely, but hopefully down the line it's going to come out to be that way. Because, I have a lot of things I have to talk about with other people and things like this, and I never talk to anybody, my mother, my father, my kids. One night I got drunk a couple weeks ago just because I had to tell them a few things, and the reason I had to do it that way was because that's the only way I could talk about it. Things that did happen, and the next day, Vince told me, he says, you should talk to your kids. I went home and sat there for 45 minutes. I couldn't say nothing. I had to be drunk to talk to them. It's just, that's life. But they keep on saying, you have to change. It's not you have to change. It's let everybody else understand. That's my feeling, is let them understand. Why should I have to keep on changing? I changed too many times already, I think. I don't even know what the hell's going on after a while. Just started losing it.
Society is starting to change.
Yeah, it's like...
Since 81, I would say.
It's like, one thing you think about and then it goes and then something else just takes its place. And that keeps bothering you and bothering you and bothering you. And now I'm learning I used to try to drown it, but I can't do that no more. I don't get worked up. Sometimes I just come here and have coffee and talk with a couple of the guys, and that keeps it down. Then I can go home, because before I couldn't go home. I have to go home just to have that beer, but that beer was all night.
Thank God for the study center.
Yeah. It took me 21 years to find some place, you know. It was like, you didn't even know this was here. Finally, I got checked into the VA hospital, and Carolyn Nutter sent me over here. If it wasn't for that, you know, it's a long road out there.
I came back a little different way, being well, not only was a nurse, but I came back through the MediVac system. And as I came through the MediVac system, there was only one person that really realized, you know, what was happening to me. And I had to have I came back as a psych patient. I was sick over there. I didn't agree with it, but I came back as a psych patient. That's the only way I could come back. And this one that was with me, he was real nice and talked to me like that. The others, they didn't realize what had happened to me. And finally I got back to a stateside hospital. It happens to be the same base that I started out as an officer. And they just called me the sad one. They did not know what to do with me. I had to make my own way because they didn't know. And the longer I stayed there, the madder I got. I threw things. I did things that I wouldn't ordinarily do because there was nobody there that would sit down and try to understand what happened to me. And it would take me 2 months to get transferred or 2 months to get discharged. And the doctor, all he said to me, they were overloaded. All he said to me was, I'll write your record so you'll never go overseas again. I was a flight nurse. He killed my career right there. I said, then discharge me. And so he medically discharged me. I had to stay there another month and a half. And all of them agreed that I could have been treated as an outpatient. But because I was in the service, I had to be on the floor. I had to be on the unit. And the saving grace is that they had a program where the nurses could work on the floors, and I was granted that, so I was off the ward 8 hours a day, and that's the only reason I kept it all together. And then I got home, and it was like nobody knew I'd gone to Vietnam. Nobody said, "Oh, you're out of the service. How are you feeling?" or anything like that. They just went on like normal life, like I didn't leave town. You know, it was only my father who'd been through World War II. And they called it shell shock then.
Right.
And he talked to me and I said, he's the only one that said, I understand what's happening. And so between alcohol, crime, and just leaving people alone, going out, racing my car, as I did lots of times, because I was potentially suicidal at that time. And I said, oh, it'd be nice, to hit that tree, and that would be it, and you wouldn't have to worry about it, because there's no place to go. It wasn't until I came back in 70, I left in June of 70, I came back. 4 to 5 months later, I had gotten terribly sick to the point of passing out, terrific headaches. I mean, I was so sick, I couldn't fly anymore. I turned myself in, I said, I was so sick, that's why I was depressed, and just, there was nowhere to go. And so I told them I'm suicidal because I can't handle this being sick all the time. And that's why they sent me back. And it wasn't until I finally gave in 84, I couldn't work anymore. And I tried overdosing with pills. And I was put in the VA hospital here. And I went home once. The first time I was in, I wouldn't talk about Vietnam, I wouldn't tell anybody where I'd been. And the second time, there was a nurse that sat down with me. And through just sitting with me talking for an hour or two, I finally admitted to her that I'd been in Vietnam. And then I finally found the vet center. I've been under psychiatric care ever since I was in the 70s. But it wasn't until I came here to the vet center that I started making progress. I almost lost my marriage, my family. I ran away from my home because I couldn't live there anymore.
How's everything going?
So,
I'm just going public, I'm sorry.
I relate to a lot of that. My eyes get running, I hope you'll edit that part out. Just listening to Margaret, so I'm off the talk right now. I'd rather pass just for a second.
Okay. I throw this open to you because I'm, like I said, I'm not a veteran. What surprises the hell out of me is that the government, somebody was not aware of what was going on.
nobody
It's-
mentioned.
You know, like John Bird's made a good point. During World War II, the soldiers came back over the road. They had 3 weeks, they kind of talked to each other. They were doing the things that, for you, are coming 10 years later. And that's the thing that aggravates me, is that nobody seemed to have been aware of what was going on.
They also fought in a quote-unquote honorable war.
Well, I don't know if honorable's word, winning, quote unquote.
Oh, winning, yeah.
See, I think the fact that we were losing and that we lost, made it, something they want to put out of their minds. But I think I see how it happened. I think that the government and society in general expected the psychiatrists and our brilliant doctors who were best in the world to be able to cope with it. But they didn't have the experience. They didn't have the knowledge about post-traumatic stress syndrome. That had been labeled different things in other wars, shell-shocked, and what they call in World War I. They had another
Combat fatigue.
In
whatever. They had different names for it. And
In Vietnam, they called it battle fatigue.
battle fatigue.
As I heard about it over there.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, it amazes me that they would take a soldier who just spent 12 months in Vietnam fighting or whatever.
12 months, 12 days. You get at a level of intensity in
Right.
2 days, 3 days.
Okay, all right. And then within 24 hours, in some guys' case, they were walking the streets of Glens Falls, Albany.
Intense fighting in the jungle to within 19 to 24 hours worrying about a parking ticket.
Doesn't make sense.
It's real tough for a 19-year-old.
That's a point I made before, 19, 20-year-old kids. It doesn't make sense to me. Somebody along the way didn't say, look what's happening here. And hence you got the stereotype that Ray and I chuckled about the half-crazed Vietnam vet in the early 70s. And, and that seemed to be the approach everybody took towards it, so you had the unemployment problems and so on. I'm going to argue with about winning and non-winning. Current historical interpretation is that you guys bought time over there. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Right.
And-
It delayed the domino period.
Right, that you guys bought time with it, and in the long run, that was a successful war, because India today is free. Good parts of Southeast Asia are now free because of what you guys did. So when people start talking about winning or not winning, make sure they're aware of that. That's common historical interpretation today. That's not just me. All right.
They sort of put it in your head though, you were winning. You were kicking the hell out of them people. I was in the infantry and we went out, and I think I was in base camp in K. That was our base camp, like just maybe 4 days in a whole year. The rest of the time, Michael, we went into 101st camp for 2 days. Once in a while, you go up on the mountainside, guard artillery for 2 days. But you were out there, always. And it's after 163 days. After the year, I came into California someplace, and I was all upset because I had a tie, and I didn't know how the hell to tie it. I just wanted to go home, It's like, how can I tie it? I don't even know. But I had to get it tied. I was too embarrassed to ask somebody there, because I'm supposed to be somebody, and who the hell knows who, but I'm afraid to ask this guy, here, tie my tie for me, will you? And then everybody wanted to take advantage of it. It seemed like, get off. I got on a taxi, and right away a taxi driver says, got any good stuff? Got any good stuff? It was like, what is this? Just let me go the hell home. Then I got home in Albany. I didn't even go home. I went to the bar first because I had to have a couple of drinks, go home, face everybody that was home.
Yes, maybe clear something up for me, I'm not sure about. Who invented the domino theory? Did the communists announce it, or did we label it?
Basically, Dulles in the 50s under Eisenhower,
Okay.
he was the Secretary of State, and his basic concept was that domino theory said that if one country fell to communists, then the next country, the next country, the next country.
Okay, I agree with the theory a little bit, but I don't think it's completely true. I think that the Vietnamese wanted their nation whole, and their tribe, their people, to control that area, okay, which they historically been trying to do, and that they succeeded in their game plan. I say that they won the war by not allowing us to chase them out, to infiltrate us, to win the war politically on our streets with our own people and our own media. And I say they won. And they deserved the victory. They fought for it, they sacrificed their people, and they worked, right? Withstood bombing, horrible bombing, a lot of stuff. So how could you say we won when they won? See, that doesn't stick in my mind. I don't see how, you know.
The short term.
We could say we won because we stopped the domino theory, which some Politico invented way back then. You know, everybody may have thought, hey, well, that sounds good because they're scared of communism. You know, Red Scare. Those are the Red Scare days. Joe McCarthy days almost.
Right,
okay?
exactly.
That was bullshit. I think that was bullshit. That's why I think, and I feel, and I think so many of us feel, that the 60,000 guys whose names are on the wall died for that bullshit. I mean, what the fuck for? Excuse my language. What for? And I'll take exception when somebody says it was a just war. It was honorable the way I myself carried myself and did my job, and the guys around me. That was honorable. But the rest of it was bullshit.
But what they're saying is that, you know, the short-term goal, keeping South Vietnam democratic, did remain.
I'll take exception with that.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
You can get to DM and all those guys if you want, but the long-term goal, if you want to call it that, of keeping Southeast Asia non-communist to a large extent worked. And whether that was one of the, you know, whether that
Okay.
it seems like it came out of the Vietnam War, that whatever happened over there certainly caused a schism in the communist parties. You know, there's the old saying that we were afraid of the Chinese, but I think if they looked at history, they would see that the North Vietnamese were as afraid of the Chinese as we were. The last time they invited the Chinese in, they stayed for 1,000 years.
Right.
So we are afraid to bomb North Vietnam because we're afraid the Chinese are coming in.
Right.
So that's bullshit what you're saying. I agree with you on that. All right, because they should have known. I mean, if I know, and I just look at a history book, you can't tell me Johnson and Nixon, those guys were not aware of the fact that, you know, the Chinese were, you know, North Vietnam did not want China in there. There was no way.
They hated each other for thousands of years.
Right.
They didn't fear each other. I know that. But you know, like you're saying, you know, you take a look and you see that we did protect that country for a while. Well, we can protect any spot in the world with enough manpower and money and supplies. That is no great accomplishment. You can do that out of brute force. I don't know if it would do any good to describe the government there, but it was an elitist minority, you know, and there were virtual dictators, just like Marcos, okay, Batista, right, and all these other dictators that we support. They're out of the same mold, and you know, so I think the domino theory is an illusion or a delusion.
Any other thoughts on the justification, or you want to move? You want to?
I didn't call the war. I called it was
Congress didn't need it, something.
like going over.
You're
Not into the politics.
You know, I was very disturbed when I realized what was going on there. I became aware after I was there. My father served in World War II, and I thought I was doing a right and honorable thing, you know, joining the army and going and fight for my country, you know. And I was really very disillusioned when I found I was just fighting for a few elitists and a few politicians and a few industries, and had nothing to do with the American people. American people were just as much a victim. We lost our sons and our brothers, you know. And I joined out of complete pure patriotism that I thought was right. That was the same feeling my father and all those other guys joining the
And that
Army for
hasn't
World War
changed now,
II.
right? You still feel okay
I
about
feel like
going,
I've been
right?
ripped off. I feel like I've been ripped off from my youth and a lot.
I still feel I did not do the wrong thing by going.
I feel like I did the right thing by him. I had a purpose in my life and accomplished that purpose.
Thank God they were there.
I didn't even know where I was going.
Did you
I
know
got
what?
drafted, went to Fort Dix, and when I got done with basic, they said, go to Fort Polk, Louisiana. So I said, can't be any worse. And we got down to Fort Polk. Next morning, they said, better pay attention, because in 8 weeks, you're going to Vietnam. And it was like, where the hell is this place now, you know? I called my mother up, and I said, hey, Mom, you know where I'm going? She said, yeah. I said, where? She said, Vietnam. I said, oh. I said, how'd you know? She said, well, they used to show this on television about this tiger land in Fort Polk, Louisiana, with jungle training for Vietnam. And she said, when you told me you were going there, she said, I knew right where you were going. I said, Jesus. It's like, everybody knew how I was going except me. Until about 3 months ago, I didn't even know where Vietnam was. That's how far I just threw it away. I have an 11-year-old daughter. She had this world book or whatever, and she said, well, let's see where Vietnam is. And that's the first time I seen it when it was associated like on the globe. I seen, like the state of Texas, I seen it in pictures like that, but I've never seen where the hell it was. And I went to Taiwan, and I looked that up. And it seemed like when I went to Taiwan, it was a long ways away, and it isn't that far. It's like right around the corner. It's like scary. It's 22 years, and you didn't even care where the hell you were. Now I got a lot of catching up to do, but it just doesn't come out.
Is that a common experience? Did everybody, were you aware of Vietnam before you went? You must have been, Sal.
Not really.
Not really.
No.
The name.
Not really. I knew whereabouts it was after I thought, they were saying you want to join the Army, you're going to go to Vietnam. Crazy, first time I heard of it, before I joined the Army, and I looked it up and I looked on a map, and I think I had an old map, and it was called the Two Kingdoms of Siam at that time. And I said, oh, Siam, King and I, right? And that's where that plane was from. And I looked, and it's almost exactly on the other side of the world, and that just made the adventure more of, I'm going around, going around the world, that side of the world.
You thought you were going to meet the old Brenner over there.
Well, no, I thought it was like all that time that I had spent in my backyard when I was a kid trying to dig a hole with China.
You succeeded.
We just started digging a hole one day, and a neighbor and my father came over and said, you guys keep digging long enough and you'll dig a hole right to China. And he just let us do this after school for about 2 or 3, 4 days. And I figured, well, there's a better way to get there. I'll take a jet.
I was with my first duty station was out in California with the Inshore Undersea Warfare Group 1. I was in charge of classified correspondence. I pretty well knew in advance what I was getting into. But when I got my orders, I was in New York City, 3rd Naval District headquarters. When I got my orders, I think I thought believing that I was really going, because I said, well, that's okay. I said to my chief in the office, I said, I don't mind being on an aircraft carrier or a cruiser or they're recommissioning battleships. He said, no, look closer at the orders. And I said, well, he put the ship in Saigon, that's all right. And in real short order, I found out that there was to be no ship for this fellow. But I knew what Vietnam was about to a good extent. I don't say I was well versed in it. And 3rd Naval District headquarters in New York City in 1967, 68, we were right in the heart of all, the beloved children and the protesters and everything, so I knew pretty well what was going on over here about it, so but you just never know till you get there. It's a whole different critter.
I wasn't too aware. I wasn't hardly aware of protesting. There were very small write-ups about it in the paper. I joined the Army in July of '67, and up until then, there wasn't much.
Yeah, you're right, yeah.
There wasn't much publicity about it. It was really suppressed. But then, by the end of '68, when I came back, and I was MediVac too, by the way, and I was in Valley Forge Hospital, and I'm telling you, the thing was blown out of proportions, and it was like already starting to split the country apart. And seeing that, saying, "Wow, where the hell did I go? What did I do? You know, was it right or wrong?" And it caused me a lot of confusion. But it was really suppressed. I guess until the movement grew and I couldn't suppress it anymore.
Yeah, you know, you're right, because when did you say you got back in July of '68?
Yeah. Oh no. Well, later in September.
September, so you really had, you know, I mean, August was the Chicago Convention in '68.
Yeah, and they had shot by Kennedy and Martin Luther King
Yeah.
at the time. There was all kinds of crazy stuff going on in the country. Really
So,
bad.
yeah, because it was really, that's, Chicago Convention, I think that's what really brought home to most people,
Right.
you know, the war protest. Can we talk a minute about your feeling towards that protest?
Well, sure, I can tell you what I think of it. I don't know about how I feel about it. I think that a lot of people generally were aware that it was of it being a ripoff, of war being a ripoff, and that there was really no threat to us directly. And there was a portion of the protest movement that was genuine, that really saw it for what it was. I think the majority, though, they were just along to make a spectacle and to be accepted, you know, as on one side or the other. You know, a lot of people just took on the role of being a protester just for some kind of identity, you know, just to be somebody. Had no idea what was going on. All they could do was repeat the rhetoric. You know, they couldn't explain why they were protesting. And my feelings about it? I don't know. I have unresolved feelings. I have no idea how I feel about it.
Any other thoughts on it?
I saw the protests on television when I followed the news on what was happening. I didn't really understand why the government was involved in Vietnam and like that. But I had my feelings about it, you know, people, you know, like going to Canada and like that. I didn't think that was the only answer to it. I didn't think protests were the only answer. Something should be done, but I just didn't know just how to go about it. But I just thought people should get together and talk about it and make it. I've always thought about, you know, if you want to attack the government, do it through an organized method, peacefully, with letters and with testifying and like that, you know, and go about it that way. I figured they had a reason to protest, but I didn't think the way they went about it would net them anything. You know, all the energy they were using wasn't going to get them anything in return. But if they did it the proper way, maybe we could get out of Vietnam.
Well, let me ask you a question. I think what you're talking about is civil disobedience.
No, I just,
protesting and causing a big scene is what you mean?
yeah, most of
Yeah.
the protesters that cause a big scene, or you block buildings,
Yeah,
or
civil
like the,
disobedience,
yeah.
I
It
think it's a
doesn't
valid
get you-
tactic, though. I think
well,
they prove
it's-
that it works. You know?
Forcing people into changing their mind about.
Yeah. Making so much of a commotion that everybody has to listen and the media listens.
Then I would say there's two ways of attacking. Only one side was shown at that time. The ones that would come from where I'm looking at should have been active too.
Yeah.
To press through, like I say, testifying and laws and like that. I think, yeah, both sides can but it should be on both sides, and then one person, like, one wouldn't be hated for what they're doing, because there would be two different attacks of what was happening.
Yeah, I understand what
That
you're
would
saying,
be-
but okay. Because of time, no one's simple, just, you know, you go through all the right channels for so long, and nothing happens, and you just keep getting stonewalled. I think civil disobedience is okay. And I want to ask you a question, because I have a thought now about us, about veterans' rights and veterans' affairs. Would we have been justified with getting together and getting some civil disobedience ourselves
I don't
to
think there
maintain
would.
our rights?
I don't think that would net you anything except exposure. What are you going to do after you get exposure then? To press to get the laws changed and to get the money you want and like that. I think there's ways of doing it. I haven't gotten involved in the ways of doing it. I just feel there's ways to do it because it hasn't only been in the last year. I've had both feet on the ground, but I still feel there's ways to do it. But I needed to get myself together first before I could do anything else. And that's why I'm here today, because I want to do something positive now that I can.
Isn't the irony that Vietnam veterans have used the tactics of the 60s to a certain extent?
I don't know. Well, yeah.
I mean, some of their dealings with the VA hospital, would you say? To a certain extent, I don't know about civil disobedience, but certainly some of the tactics of the 60s seem to be used to take out veterans,
Yeah.
which is, I thought was kind of roundabout.
I think it's good to learn from
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
Because they got results before.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what it
you know,
does.
and that all goes back to the civil rights movement of the 50s, so you know, we're building on each other. We got into a little bit about today. Can we just kind of briefly talk about what you see being the major problems facing a veteran today? You know, and then maybe what about organizations that are out there, like somebody said earlier, thank God for this vet center. Can we just talk about some of the problems that you see, maybe in a general sense, if you like, that 1988, 89 are facing Vietnam vet? Mr. Boyd. Baranowski. Where am I getting words?
Oh, Worth. That's Donnie Worth, yeah, my buddy.
Oh, you mentioned him, so what a mind that guy. I've got no mind.
I find I have a hard time with Vietnamese, Chinese, you know, it's like they're all gooks. And to me, we're the minority. You know, they're the kings. I mean, the government hires them before they hire a Vietnam veteran. You know, it's like we did for them. They came to this country and they're better off than we are. You know where I'm coming from now? It's like, how many Vietnam veterans are out there that don't have a job? Now, we have Vietnamese working in the post office. Federal government should hire that Vietnam veteran before these people. I don't care if they were number one on the list. They should never get that damn job. Never. You know, I mean, they're like visitors here to me. But they got more rights than we do.
Is unemployment still a problem to Vietnam?
I'm a project director for a program for homeless Vietnam vets, and that's one of the biggest things. Employment, PTSD, substance abuse, whether it be addiction or self-medication. I used to feel the same identically to the way George does, but after a lot of thinking, real careful thinking, I have to think back to what we did to the Vietnamese as well. The South Vietnamese, some of the atrocities. I don't mean necessarily war atrocities, but the way we treated them. We were in their country. And I also want to say the reverse of that we weren't treated very well ourselves. I find it the most difficult thing for me now is to look at any one race or culture of people the same way I used to. A lot more understanding of people according to, quote, class or category or whatever. I understand totally where George is coming from, because I used to come from there. There's a lot more forgiveness in me now. It bothers me sometimes. I remember when I was unemployed and I wanted to get a job with the state of New York, and I was having a tough way to go with it, and then I read in the paper about an article with, the picture in there of a Vietnamese fellow who's a computer operator with some State Department and how he climbed the ladder and everything, and that bothered me, still does. But I don't know, I put myself in their shoes. I know it was tough. I remember too many things that I saw that were heart-wrenching and gut-wrenching when I was there.
You still think there's prejudice towards the veteran out there in the job market?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. Vietnam vets are a sexy item today. We're in vogue.
I was going to say, I use that quote, "You are in."
It's
Yeah,
like,
you are in. Yeah.
yeah, you're a
Yeah,
Vietnam
right.
vet, but I can hire you, but don't tell me. There's a lot of that going on. There's a lot, whereas not too long ago, PTSD was, oh my God, but now Vietnam vets are emblematic of it. And we're doing a lot for the non-vet PTSD afflicted person, the rape victims, child abuse victims, natural disasters, airline crashes. I guarantee that there were people who were professionals ready to talk to the people from the survivors of the flight that crashed in Iowa. And I also will guarantee that part of that was because of the precedents, or at least the commonly known precedents set by Vietnam veterans and post-traumatic stress disorder. Either having done something, having been a victim of something, or having witnessed an incident. PTSD, PTSD for me is something very personal. So when I deal with clients with PTSD, as is substance abuse, a personal thing for me, it hits home. I've got a real good understanding of it.
What aggravated me when I got back, and because I didn't want to talk that I was from Vietnam, I heard a lot of people say, well, PTSD, I can't even say it right. PTSD.
I had to look it up.
I used to always say that shit. I didn't know what the hell it was.
I have to look it up every time I type it. I can't get those initials straight.
But they used to say that it was a cop-out, that we didn't want to work, that you didn't want to work, so you were post-traumatic stress syndrome, and that was an excuse. And so I wouldn't tell them where I was going. I wouldn't tell them I was a disabled vet. I wouldn't tell them anything. I'm not going to open my mouth and get plastered by them that I'm just gold bricking, like they call it. I might be able to work 3 months, maybe 5, and then I'd have to quit. And then I go back because I didn't have enough disability to live on. I got out and I had disability. Said, well, the VA, they don't want you to work if you're on disability. I said, well, how am I supposed to live? They didn't give me enough to live on. I just pushed myself, and 4 to 5 months was my limit. And then I was out for maybe 6 months. And then I tried again. And that's the way I live. And I heard it from a lot of people that it was just a cop-out. These people are just trying to run around the way. They want an excuse for the way they act. And I just don't want to associate with those people.
A lot of people say, well, we carried that baggage before we went over.
Yeah.
It's real hard
Yeah.
to say when you look
Yeah.
at Vietnam vets that we all carried that same identical baggage when we went over.
I don't think that's true.
Not at all.
I've never been arrested. I've been really good marks in school. I screwed up in school a couple of years later on in high school. I ended up quitting. But since I've been out of the Army, I've been arrested about 25 times, and I've done 8 years in prison. Out of the 20 years since I've been back to Vietnam, 8 of them have been in prison. what percentage is that, 40%?
I hardly knew what beer was until I got to Vietnam, and I sure knew everything in the book after that.
Another 50% of that 100% was spent oblivious on drugs or drinking. I think that what we're all describing is blaming the victim. Sociological
Well put.
They blame the victim now. You had asked a question before about employability. I can get a job, and a lot of, I'm a carpenter in my trade. They really don't, don't reject you for the job if you're a Vietnam vet. And if you're, well, maybe he's strong, but they watch you like you're a live hand grenade. They watch you like you're a booby trap all the time. And they don't watch other people like they watch you, They wink and they hear that you went crazy. Or did something, fruity,
Are you telling me that despite what the paper's saying, that stereotype of the vet still
Sure is.
exists?
I'm saying
That's what you're saying to me?
That's right.
My first week on the job, I was trying to chase a fly in the office. I guess I wandered by it a little too ardently, and two of the ladies that worked there were real fearful that I was going to go off or do something. They tell me now that they know me, that they were really afraid of me, just because they knew that I was a Vietnam vet.
We're talking August 1989, that stereotype is still strong out there.
This happened back in October of '87, and I'm in a three-piece suit doing this, with shorter hair than I have now.
The paper's telling us different, though, so.
Paper is generalizing.
Yeah. It's saying, you said it before, the Vietnam vet is in, but I think I understand what you said before, he's in, but,
I'd rather be recognized for having taken great strides in bringing about world peace than I would for being a Vietnam vet. There are better ways to be recognized than for being a vet. I personally feel I went from feeling, when I came home, I thought, I'm a vet, I did good, things are going to be all right. I found out after well, it took me 2 times. I was a little more stupid than I am now. It took me a bar fight and a fight flying over a cocktail table at a party to make me realize I don't need to tell people I'm a Vietnam vet in 1970. And I submerged myself in drinking quite heavily. I was on a first-name basis with every carbonated bubble that ever existed. I didn't realize that I had any problems with Vietnam. I didn't feel that I was consciously stuffing it until back in 87, early 87, when I finally decided that I needed to address my drinking problem. I wasn't an everyday drinker and I was not a get-drunk drinker, but it was interfering enough with my life and had been for years and years. During the course of a rehab program at the VA, the program director sat down with me and suggested I take a look at some of the Vietnam veterans' issues, that they can't just address the substance abuse without addressing these other things. And I, no, I don't want anything to do with it. But I agreed to be screened for an inpatient 5-week PTSD program, Vietnam Veterans Readjustment Program, and eventually I went through that. We, the sads, mads, and glads throughout the whole thing, banging walls, hugging, crying, laughing, reliving Vietnam in order to sort it out, make it a little more manageable, coming out real raw. Again, thank God for this vet center for the last 2.5 years for me. But only 2.5 years ago did I start addressing any Vietnam veterans issues and became aware of what was happening with it. And I don't say it was just because I didn't self-medicate that deeply to kick Vietnam away. So I don't know whether it's self-medicating or alcoholism, addiction, whatever. I'm just glad I don't do it anymore. But my problems are far from over. But from 2.5 years ago, I went from, yeah, it's okay, I'm a Vietnam vet, but I hate every civilian out there. When I came out of the hospital, to sort of getting a chip on my shoulder about it. And now I'm sort of coming to an even keel I'm proud to have been there sharing something that's without a doubt the most poignant thing in my life, and knowing that I did a phenomenal job while I was in Vietnam, that my stories and photographs sure helped a lot of the groundwater sailors down there. Did a lot for them on the home front with hometown news releases. I still get irritated sometimes. My friends are all veterans, all the way up from some homeless vets to professionals working with the state of New York. I got a lot of issues left to resolve. I went through 2.5 years of group here. I just left group about 2 months.
Group, and you still have issues?
Sure. I'm just supposed, they just told me I could manage them now.
Okay.
So,
You got my number.
yeah, I do, Sal.
I don't know if you want to talk about problems. I'm often intrigued about the vet center. Everybody keeps saying God bless it, but I could. When
You asked a question about what I thought was problems now with,
Yeah.
Well, I think, I saw last week or a couple weeks ago that they're starting to set up base camps at each VA hospital. It's okay, you went out the other day. Up in front of the Albany VA hospital is a base camp Albany, and I think they're protesting budget cuts. Okay, and I saw that, and we're trying to get enough time to go up there and contribute to that. Except I guess one of the worst things that can happen is that they start cutting medical budgets. I have medical problems, and thank God I can get some treatment there. You know.
They have to. How else are they going to pay for the parquet floor in the waiting area?
Yes, you did a parquet floor or my benefits. You know, what's going to be more important, and I think that's a threat that concerns me. And I'll
Never get a job with the VA now, will I?
I'll testify about this place is great. I've seen it. This place has helped me, and it's helping
Phenomenal.
almost every guy that comes through here and gets involved, gets counseling and gets help, and it saves their lives a little bit, you know. And if it wasn't for this, it would just be like it was, you know, back in the 70s, you know, with nobody to listen, nobody, you know, everybody isolating. Vietnam vets have a problem isolating. We know that there's nobody that understands, nobody to talk to. Back then, anyway, there's nobody to relate to, no place to get together with people that you could relate with, and you're isolated. When you're isolated, you're vulnerable to becoming addicted or becoming
thousand things.
yeah.
I'm being called a weirdo.
Yeah, and I think it would be terrible if this place was ever canceled for money.
You're still doing me a disservice though, because I'm kind of, basically what is the vet center? What, you know?
The Vet Center is a community-based, actually a satellite type service providing agency of the VA hospital. It is not the VA. It's run by a separate regional office. This Vet Center is part of the region run out of Rhode Island. To me as a client, I don't know, it's just different. You're not coming to the VA when you come here. You're not going through the bureaucratic bullshit. When you come here, you're with other vets. And it's not just thinking of them as other vets, it's just other people that you care about. They care about you. And the counselors are people you can talk to. They're professionals. They're friends. As George said, come by here, have coffee. You don't have to go into a counseling session or a therapy session. It's just a place just to be, and to where it's okay just to be.
Does it basically serve Vietnam veterans or is it
Vietnam era
veterans?
Right.
It hasn't attracted, or would it be allowed to attract World War II veterans, for example?
Not being a staff member of the Vet Center, I can't answer that.
I think we had a Korean vet on one of the groups.
Yeah.
He was in Korea, but his symptoms were, you know, and his problems were basically on par with other people in the groups. He came to a couple of groups, and solved a couple of problems and moved on. But there's a unique set of circumstances of the times that a World War II veteran wouldn't be able to identify them, right? Wouldn't be able to relate with us. You know? And the key here is being able to relate. I can explain something to you, you can understand it. You really don't know what I'm talking about. We probably talk about certain things, certain feelings. And other Vietnam vets, not all of them do, but you know, out of a group, you're going to find somebody that's going to relate to you and give you some feedback, and give you their experience and how they handled it, or say, hey, I'm looking for the answer to that one too, or, you know. And you know, coming back in 24 hours and culture shock in this brilliant world, materialistic world we live in, it's different. It's different, and there was no real, there was no attack on Pearl Harbor that made everything righteous for this war.
It was just a shady 2012 resolution.
There's another thing about the vestry that I wanted to bring up because I was the type of person that I could talk just so long on certain issues. We would get to a lot, you know, I would be all right and I could go out and I could work and like that. But I knew there were still issues there. I wasn't comfortable. But with my counselor, he understood. And he just said, you know, you step by here, you can call anytime, like that. And when it started creeping up on me and getting too much, I called back and I would get back into sessions again. I think I did that 3 or 4 times before I could actually talk on all the issues that I had. Because it just was too painful. You'd get to a certain, and it'd be just too painful, and you just had to have time. And they would give you that time. And when you called back, there was nothing, well, we knew that you should have been here longer or something like that. It wasn't, it's yeah, we can fit you in here or there. Or if it was something where your life was crashing down around you. And I've done this a couple times. I've come in, sat in the waiting room, and I said, when there's a counselor available, I'd sure like to talk to somebody. Yeah. And it wouldn't be that long. There's coffee, there's other people to talk to. The time passes, and pretty soon you get to talk to somebody. Your life is put back so you can handle it, and you're starting with sessions, and you can go on. And up to the present, that's the way my life's been going on. And I thank God for the vet center and all the help.
And the people that I've met here, fellow vets. Not him. Now
He's not here, so we can talk about it. We can talk about that, right?
For too long.
You made a great point though, because you know, like I told you, we're talking about you.
Here he comes.
We're all right, no more. Don't talk about it.
Talk about it, only one. See, I've developed a philosophy.
We just won the war, so.
What I think is what I think. But, you know.
We just won the war for you.
You made a great point because, you know, I could sit back and maybe understand but never identify. If you try to explain to somebody what it's like to teach, I taught for 20 years, a group of 17th graders, and to try to explain that, you can understand that, but you know, you can't identify that unless you've done with it. So, you know, what you're doing is, you know, the same thing that teachers would do, you know, and, you know, I thought that was a tremendous statement that you made about that, you know, you understand what you can't identify.
See, a lot of the problems that we have, I think that, I'm speaking generally from what I see with other vets and what I hear them say about when they came home, from experience in groups is that they couldn't relate to anybody when they came home. They told people about things, but people would look at you like, oh yeah, sure, but in one ear and out the other. And other combat vets from Korea and World War II, basically the ones you had contact with were in the VFW bars or older guys in bar rooms or uncles or whatever. And it was, yeah, Johnny, you got a little shell shock, you'll be okay, Johnny, you know, we're proud of you.
That's in the past. That was a
You
week
kill a lot of them,
ago.
you kill a lot of them lips over there.
Now, is that 20 years ago? That sounds a little more plausible.
I'm saying, it's like, for me, I was alone. I've been married like 21 years. I'm still alone. I was alone from, we started out Fort Dix, I think 13 of us got drafted. Then we went to Fort Polk 5. Then we went to Vietnam, won. I got off the helicopter, I think, in the field, won. I came back, my orders, I think there was like 9 guys came back, but 1 infantry, everybody else was something else. I didn't even know these people. Came back to this country, and then I was all by myself again. It was like I was always by myself, and I'm still alone.
One of the topics I bring up when I do the individuals is exactly that. Because, I mean, I picked this up before I started this project, that guys going to Vietnam basically went by themselves.
Right.
And they came back by themselves, and they didn't go like in World War II, you know, you got the
Whole company.
whole company went over, so you got to know the guys,
Yeah,
you know, you got to know the guys, you talk to them in the boat. But basically, people got into a TWA, they flew in by themselves, they, you know, they may have made some friends there, but you never
dispersed within
developed.
2 days,
Yeah.
Dispersed within 2 days.
It's just that, you know,
It's like you really don't even know what the hell went on. I used to say that I came home July 23rd, 1966, and I have this little whiskey bottle. It says TWA on it. One day I was looking at it, and I had it written on there, so I assumed I came home on July 28th, because it says July 28th, 1966, 67. But I used to always say the 23rd. Then I went and looked at some paperwork, and it says the 26th. And now I'm sitting here saying, what the hell day did I come home?
The time zone change and
Yeah.
the 19-hour flight back.
I talked to a buddy of mine, he was there a little longer. I said, well, Tim, when did you come home? He said, sometime in October. He said, I don't even know. I mean, you didn't even care. It was just get me the hell out. That was hell. That's what it was, hell. And I do the 60s music, and I
Oh,
give it
man.
to people, and I say, this is from the Hell's Jukebox, the Devil's Jukebox, right here. It is. Sometimes when I play that music, I'm in my van,
Oh,
I feel
good.
like it's a helicopter, and I'm on a
Yep.
mission, and I'm just cruising. Some people say, I don't ever want to get in that van with you, you're going to kill somebody. But you just lose everything. You just drive along, and you're floating, you're going into this mission. You know,
And all you need is light my fire to come on the radio, or lighter shade of pale. I went through, one night I finished up a group session here at the Med Center, and I lived up in Boston Spa at the time, off of exit 12, and I was in my Jeep driving up, and it had to be for a while, at least 3 or 4 minutes. No other cars on the road, and it's raining, and I'm headed up between exit 10, around exit 10, maybe a little south of it, and I'm envisioning myself back on the river in patrol boat, the PBRs, going right up the river again, and I had to pull off at exit early not to get over on Route 9 because it was just coming back. That's where I was. I was aware that I wasn't there, but the problem was it was too good a feeling. It started to feel real good. A lot of me still wants to go back. Not on one of these journeys that they're going back now, on one of the therapeutic, but I want to go back and redo some of this stuff, do it better.
I have them same feelings. It's like there's answers in bomb song. I don't even know what the hell the questions are.
Yeah.
They're there. You know, that would help me so much if I could, because I was there for so long, but I don't know about it. I do, someplace back here, someplace down here, it's there, but it just doesn't, it's like, it's not really exciting. It is, but, I mean, you know, people say we do this and we do that, and they can have it, because I found that, well, I was with the 1st Cavalry, and we made a lot of aerosols. And the biggest thing in the world, the most exciting thing, you could never feel the adrenaline flow is coming into an LZ, and before you, they're prepping it with artillery, and there's shit flying all over the place. Now there's gunships on both sides, and you're coming in, and all of a sudden the gunships are blowing the hell out of this LZ. Then the machine guns on your chopper start going, and I mean, right now my adrenaline is really, it's like I want to jump right through the ceiling, just thinking about it. People could never imagine this, you know? Go down here and watch the fireworks, and they have the grand finale. That grand finale isn't nothing. That is nothing.
But
But
people wonder,
this
why
is-
don't we get excited about a Sunday
Yeah.
afternoon barbecue?
You know,
That's
it's
it.
like, you want to fly. It's so great. I take a ride up the north there, like he said sometimes, and I could feel we're going, there's certain spots where the road is higher than the tree lines.
That's
And
it.
I'm coming into an LZ, and there it is, just sitting there. And I know everything is going off exactly just like it was right there. And it's great. To me, it's great, but nobody can experience this.
My wife wondered why I was so close-mouthed when we used to make trips. We lived on the west coast of Florida, across Alligator Alley, Route 84, down in the Everglades. I mean, I was back there in country. I didn't really realize what it was all about then. I knew it was, you know, that I was associating with Vietnam, but I thought, hey, this is sort of neat. But it always got me into a weird mood just before I realized I was a vet.
You mentioned the music before. That's one of the things I'm doing. I'm taking the music from that time period that directly or indirectly relates to the war, putting together sort of like an introductory type of thing.
You know what, you have a little Credence on there.
Well, I can't
You
see.
know, they do that on Tour Duty, and they do it in China, the show China Beach, and they do it in all Vietnam movies. I don't know.
But it just gets my...
Some of that
It's a
music
good
just
song,
makes you
but-
feel like, man, you're coming into it again.
And proud.
Well, see, no,
You lose the whole thing.
I'm only going to do music that pertains specifically to the Vietnam War, from like Green Beret to Billy
Yeah,
Joe,
Barry Sadler.
Barry Sadler, or to Billy Joe at the end, right? The Night Say God in between. You know, some of the stuff was against the war.
Well, I'll tell you a little experience here. I just remembered that. I told you this once. I was home on, I think, 19 days leave before I went to Vietnam. And right after Thanksgiving. And what I wanted some green tea underwear. Right? I didn't want any white underwear because if somebody that I knew would come back and said, you know, get some green underwear. You don't want to wear white, you know, anything white. And so my mother took me shopping with J.C. Penney's here and here, trying to find some green underwear. Finally got some. And she's driving the car, and only got about 3-4 days of leave left, maybe 2 days, 3 days. And she's starting to get a little nervous about the day I'm leaving. And we're riding in the car, and Country Joe and the Fish come on, and they're singing that song about
1, 2, 3.
1, 3, 4, and then
Fixing the diagram.
yeah, and you know, I dig the song.
So,
I understand what they're singing about now, you know, but at the time, he says, hey, Mom, Pa, be the first one on your block to have your boy come home in a box.
Yeah.
My mother went to pieces when she heard that, and she smacked into another car and hit a pole. And messed up the car. We didn't get hurt, but and we sat there and she was crying and fucked up for, all messed up for you know, a couple minutes. And I had a promise that I'd be good, you know, get a job in the rear, and I stayed out of trouble. Exactly the opposite.
My parents, my father passed away about a year after I got back, but I just found out about a year and a half ago how upset my parents were that I was in Vietnam. I remember letting me know up until about a year and a half ago. Did my mother reveal to me how upset she was. When I came back, it was like I had gone away to the Adirondacks for 6 weeks to overnight camp. Homecoming was really atrocious. Parents got jealous because I stopped to see my fiance in Indianapolis before I came to Syracuse to see them, and all that petty stuff. Relatives, I was still sort of a black sheep in the family because I did go to Vietnam. My cousin got out, he became an Army officer, was at Pentagon for 2 or 3 years. Other relatives didn't serve. And, you know, Jewish, upper middle class Jewish boys don't go to Vietnam. They have enough, their parents have enough influence to get them out, which my father did, but I chose not to partake. I knew that much when I came out of college that I wasn't trying to get out of it. I was trying to avoid the draft by joining the Navy. And if you join the Navy, you don't have to go to Vietnam. I didn't know. No one said I was bright. But, and I've got 2 childhood friends, 3. One's a hospital administrator in Boston, another's a leading attorney in Syracuse, another's a stockbroker in New York. They didn't have to go in the military. I look at them now with their families and how they've got it so together. I look at that emotionally and say, my God, where am I? No children, just starting out in a new career a year and a half ago. a real bad bout with the bottle for about 16, 17 years. And if I use my intellect at all, I think the fact that my wife and I are very happy, and maybe my friends are not as happy as they may appear with the Mercedes-Benz Corvettes.
Chris Olson Street.
But I guess there's a little bitterness there. I don't blame the guys themselves, but I'm just wondering, you know, how come me? How come I went through that? And then I sit back and I say, yeah, but guess what? It's an experience I wouldn't give to anyone for $1 million. And I wouldn't. I have to say, Vietnam, going there, doing as well as I did there, I did real well. But the most admirable thing that I've done in my life is be alive to this day after the last 17, 18 years since coming home. These last years, well, especially these last 2.5 years, they've been a real help. Being aware of what Vietnam was, through groups, bringing it up and realizing, my God, I did go through that. That did happen. I'm giving myself a lot of credit for that.
You do block it out. Because like when I started coming here, I said, I got pictures, I got paperwork, but I got nothing else. You know, it's like, I wasn't there, but these pictures says I was. You know? Because, I don't know, like, for all them years, if somebody said, well, I was in Vietnam, you were so goddamn proud of being in Vietnam, but you wouldn't tell nobody. Or if you did, they'd say, I was in Vietnam. Well, me too. And walk away. That was the end of it. You know, you didn't want to be with them. You didn't want to talk about it. That's the scary part of
Now
it.
that I can identify with.
Doesn't this go back to some of the confusion I say? I was trying to explain before, I didn't know whether it was right or wrong, and I didn't know whether to wear a crowd or whether to hide in the woodwork, you know.
I can identify what you said. Now that I can identify with, because my brother-in-law was over in Vietnam, Purple Heart, the whole thing. And to this day, he knows I'm doing this project. To this day, he will not talk about it. From the moment he got back, he made that very clear. And he was over, what, about 20 years. I mean, he walked in one night, we were doing a session. So you know, that I can understand. I mean, 20-some odd years later, he still will not talk about it. And you gotta respect his feelings. I mean, you just don't talk about it. He's got slides, and, you know, you can see, but it's a family, you know, it's one of those family rules. You don't talk to my brother-in-law about Vietnam.
I know a guy in that same situation. He was saying that he went to his sister's house, so he had to do something. And tour of duty was on. So his brother-in-law said to him, he said, well, why don't you sit down and watch this? And he said, for what? He said, I was there. And he said, you were there? It was like, you know, oh shit, this guy was really there. He said, my sister was so embarrassed, she didn't even tell her husband that I was in Vietnam.
Ooh.
You know? It took all this to tell him that, you know? It's like,
It's still alive and well, you know.
My project assistant interviewed, no, it wasn't a client, it's someone who met at a conference who was a tail gunner and a chopper now. Said I was shot down twice, but I really didn't get wounded until I came home. I still say to this day that my readjustment problems far surpass any kind of PTSD that clinicians say I have. Maybe I'm still not willing to admit I have PTSD, I don't know. That may be an issue in itself. But that's real, I can understand wholeheartedly what that person said. I wasn't wounded until I came home. We thought there was hope when we were over there. If we got out alive, we were going to come back to a real good life.
The world, the real world.
I'm glad I wasn't a minority. I'm glad I wasn't a black person coming home. For all, you know, aside from being in Vietnam, I'm glad for all the shit that they had and for everything like that.
Where do you see the future as far as Vietnam? You know, the Vietnam veteran in the future.
I see BVA growing. I think they're a very good positive force politically in Washington. And I see as they grow and our numbers grow, Vietnam veterans. When I say our numbers grow, I mean there are a lot of Vietnam vets that we call tripwire vets. They used to label them that just as they'd be out in the boonies, in the woods, in a tent or in a shack. And but now they're even on the streets. but as we approach middle age and our medical needs have to be met, we're a little more frail than we were when we were 27, 28. And also we are, as World War II older veterans pass along, I think our needs will be met as veterans. I believe we've got a real strong force in BVA. Where it's going to be in the future, I don't know. I believe our popularity or the thrill of it all for the American public, the neatness is going to pass in time. And that's sort of okay, too.
Is that where the healing process is going to finally be done when that does pass? That
The healing process
If you
is
want to
designed
call it that.
individually for each person. My rate is different than Margaret's.
I mean, between American public and Vietnam War, not you specifically.
You can edit this, right?
Yes.
But there, that's my
Okay.
sincere feeling right
The
now.
American public is so unreal in the expectations and their reality. Socially is so out of tune with reality that for me to have believed that they would come to a healing term with me for all those years was an illusion. Right? Learn from coming to the groups that we got to help ourselves, and I got to help myself more importantly. And the American public, like Al so vulgarly said, you know, it's just too decadent to reality.
We got it. We got each other, and we have. There are good people. I don't mean to overgeneralize.
No, I know what you're saying.
there are good people like yourselves who are truly interested in this. There are truly good people who did go to Canada. That you can say officially. But I mean, the majority of people don't care. It's their right not to care. I mean, I'm not that into Girl Scout movement.
Right.
I mean, so why should somebody who's not in, Vietnam vet be into the Vietnam vet movement? That's understandable. What sometimes gets me is people that say that they are and say, oh, good job, and this, that, and the other thing, and they don't really mean it, or the people that... Apathy is the worst thing. I usually deal with an argumentative person, but it's the apathy that gets me.
If it wasn't for him, I would be in that boat you're talking about. Other than intellectually teaching about Vietnam in junior high school and high school, I would have no awareness whatsoever of the things that you're talking about.
But you had an open mind, or else Ray couldn't have gotten in there.
I drove him crazy. I was the nut that lived next door to him.
That's always intimidate people.
But we shared many a coffee. I did not know other than my brother about Vietnam vet until I met Ray. And living together and living next door to each other for 5 years, you start to talk. And next thing he even had me. I'm a member of the Tri-County. I want to pay my dues, which is about once every other year. And he's directly responsible for this project. In my little introduction to the ring, I say that.
Yeah.
I would not have known. I would have been one of those apathetic people that you were referring to. We've been at it a long time. Any wrap-up words or any final thoughts? I don't want to keep us here forever. I will if you let me. You see.
Close out, so.
Is there any final?
I'll give you a couple of things that I have on my mind. I hope that what you're doing is going to help educate students. I hope they don't take their lives and the good life that they have so much for granted. I hope they don't become apathetic and let the government do whatever they think their paranoia tells them to do. Could be involved in another Vietnam, Nicaragua right now if it wasn't for the Vietnam experience. I think that's a plus. That's good. Something happened to me last year. Two times last year that was really moving, really good. I thought it was really positive. Both times I was in a store. One time I was getting some fast food and these two young guys are there, and they must have been about 17 or so, and they saw my hat. Mentioned Vietnam, and they said, "Wow, you were in Vietnam?" And I said, "Yeah." And their reaction was so different than anything that had ever happened to me. They said, "Wow, you know, we're really proud of you. You know, respect what you did. You know," and it just blew me away.
Yeah,
It's like
the
I wanted to
people
just start crying right there. I wanted to just, you know, I didn't know what to say, and I ended up saying thanks.
People out there our age, they
Thinking
could care
twice.
less.
Yeah.
Young kids, they
Yeah.
want to hear about
Yeah,
it.
the kids
That's
are
why
fantastic.
I always sit there and say, they don't teach this in school, you know, it's, why don't they teach you this stuff, you know? Let them know what's going on. Let them know where it is.
That's why I wanted to hit on more current problems, because I think, you know, like somebody said, we were talking about their experience in Vietnam, I said, I really don't want to do war stories. I don't think that's the purpose of this project, to do war stories. If the kids want to see war stories, they can flick on any TV channel they want. I think
But they ain't saying nothing.
yeah, I would have, you know, I want this to be for kids in high school. They don't know anything about Vietnam.
Yeah.
When Jane Fonda went over, was it April and May, to Florida, they had no idea who Jane Fonda was, other than she was an actress, but they didn't know what her relationship was to the Vietnam War. They did not know. You have one or two kids. His picture was in there, by the way, in the paper. I don't know if you caught it, but I'm sure he has a copy.
Jane
with him.
called 1-800.
He has a-
The thing I always have to say about war pictures on television is they have to make them to make money, but don't even watch it. You know, they build these people up to all this shit, and it's nothing. You know, you don't get up after there and say, cut. Game is over.
There was one good one. There was one good one. Platoon was good. Really intense.
I think that was the first album, because there's a guy in there that has the 1st Cavalry patch on his shirt. And I says, if he was with the 101st, he wouldn't be wearing 1st Cavalry. I think, I know.
I think I know about where that took place in Lyman, that we went up there the next day to try to cut off the retreating Italians. They were headed towards Cambodia. We came off to try to cut them off. They already got over to Cambodia that way. And I think that I know when that happened.
That was
But,
about the closest thing I ever seen to it.
yeah, that was most realistic. Somebody who I went to see it with said, boy, well, somebody mentioned it, you know, it was Rick, he said, boy, that was so out of control. So one word to sum up being in combat, so out of control. I said, no kidding. You know, no kidding, everything just gets completely out of control. And so much random violence, you know. I don't know what I want to talk about. I wanted to say something else.
Any final thoughts?
Well, I'm glad to know that you're making videos for the schools, because my son lacked complete understanding. You know, he didn't understand anything about what was going on in my life. He was my stepson. He came to live with us when I was 8 years old, and my husband didn't really realize it. And they sort of ganged up against me when I would show behavior that they didn't approve of, and like that. And if it could have come through my son's school somewhat, at least he would have been understanding. But because my son and I had 2 years together with his father off on a carrier, I knew I had to have time alone with my son for him to understand me. And he understands me more today. My husband's just beginning to understand me today, what my son understood me a few years ago. And just from being with me the 2 years and having to understand where mother's coming from and like that. And I'm glad it's getting into the schools. It could help.
So this is going to be history oriented in classes.
Strictly for, there's a 9th grade course which teaches Vietnam from a global geographical point of view. I'm trying to do this more for the 11th grade American history class.
What happened to us or experienced war is history. What we're doing at the Vet Center is history. You know, and relation to the students they're going to see us in the future. There's a little history. They can't do anything about this, but I think that one thing I hope that you learn from this is that you're going to be the leaders someday. You're going to be the public, and you can do something about the government that you run, so that you don't get people involved in unreasonable wars, and that if you do have veterans from your wars, hopefully you'll treat them with a little more respect in the future.
And this will give you some conscience.
Hopefully.
I want to thank all of you.
Thanks for your efforts.
What do you think, sir?
Great.